is Basic, the Atari 8-bit podcast.
In the latter days, it got down to where a game would sell for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then it would die. It was like the boys hadn't discovered girls yet, and my job was to keep them from doing that. Whatever it took to keep these guys off the streets and away from alcohol and women, I could keep them busy, keep them programming.
This is an interview episode of Antic, the Atari 8-bit podcast. I'm Kevin Savitz. Jerry Jewell was co-founder of Sirius Software. Sirius published many titles for the Atari, including Alpha Shield, Capture the Flag, Fast Eddie, Gruds in Space, Sneakers, Wavy Navy, and Wayout. The company was probably best known in the Apple II world, but also published software for the Commodore and other platforms. More than 160 titles in all. This interview took place October 15th, 2015.
Tell me, let's go before the beginning of Sirius Software. Tell me the story before the story about how you got into computers and how you decided, I'm going to create a software company.
I don't think any of it was deliberate or planned. I was working for an insurance company here in Sacramento and bored out of my mind, and there was no way to go anywhere. So I took out a $1,500 loan from the bank, and I bought myself an Apple II computer and a cassette tape drive and a color TV.
Mm-hmm.
And I started learning how to program. I had no prior computer experience. A couple of weeks after I bought the computer, the local Apple II, the Apple SAC group, started forming, and I got involved with that. Ended up taking a assembly language course from Andy Hertzfeld from Apple. I sat through the whole course every Wednesday night for 6 weeks and didn't have one iota understanding of what he was talking about. But I took copious notes, and a year or two later, it all started making sense. Got a job, quit my insurance job, and took the job of sales manager for the first computer land that opened up in town, and tripled my income. Then ran into Nasser Jebeli, who was one of the Apple SAC members, and he and I got to be pretty good friends then. And I was writing a graphical editor because there really wasn't anything to actually create graphics. There was no Photoshop back then, and created a package called Easy Draw. And I needed a couple of assembly language routines that were beyond my scope of programming. One of them was a fill routine for filling a shape. And Nasser wrote that for me in assembly code. And then I said, there's nobody that knows how to draw an ellipse on the screen. And so he created an ellipse drawing routine that would allow you to draw an ellipse of any size and coordinates and fill it with any color. To this day, I do not think there's anybody that's made a graphical program that lets you draw an ellipse at any angle on the screen. It was a real simple layout, 3 points, and click. It was really simple. So, but the rest of the program was written in AppleSoft Basic. And I said, we could sell this program. So that's when the Sirius Software began. And then I said, Nasser, this would be great for computer stores if they had a way of showing off what they actually drew in like a store window. Because I was working retail, so I was thinking in the mind of a retailer. So he created a thing called Video Marquee, which cycled through different photographs and had photographs marching around the outside of a screen with a central photo. And it made a great sales presentation tool for a computer dealer to put in, on a monitor in the window of their store when they weren't open. So I packaged the Video Marquee and Easy Draw into a baggie on a floppy disk and took it around to computer dealers all over California and put it in on consignment. And it started selling like crazy. And then Nasser wrote a really simple 2-game program thing called Both Barrels, Duck Hunt, and something else. I can't remember what the other game was. They were pretty lame. It was pretty lame, but there wasn't much available back then.
Right. What year are we talking here?
What year are we talking here? 79, 80, way back. Anyway, so I started marketing that also. Then I went away for vacation for Christmas for a couple of weeks, and I came back, and Nasser says, I got something to show you. And he had this amazing game called Space Eggs, written in 100% assembly code, really fast, colorful graphics, and it was so cool. And that thing was a hit. Everybody wanted it. It took him 30 hours to program it, and we sold, 20 or 30,000 copies in the first couple of months. So it was pretty cool. Back then a blank diskette cost like $5. They were ridiculously expensive. They got down to 30 cents or something later on. But, that and a baggie and a piece of paper to explain what the game was about. And that was the whole thing. And we'd sell it for, I think Space Egg sold for $30. So it was a huge profit on those things. Nasser would get his, I think he was getting 30% royalty. And it got so big that we rented an apartment to run it out of and hired a manager, and then we got kicked out of the apartment, and we were operating it out of the computer store at night. And then
why'd you get kicked out of the apartment?
Running a commercial business.
Oh.
UPS was running. We ran out of the computer store for a while, and that just got nuts, and we really needed more equipment than the computer store had, and we needed more money. So we took in the owner of the computer store, Terry Bradley, became an equal partner with me, and we ended up renting a commercial building, moving the whole thing into that. I think we changed buildings about 6 or 7 times in the first year. We just kept growing so fast. So that's kind of the beginning of it. Like I say, no business plan at any point.
It's the best way to do it.
No venture capitalists, no outside money, none of that.
All right, so you're in your space. You've got your one programmer and your manager, and was there? What was the plan? Was it just we're going to keep churning out Apple II games, or when did you go? Okay, we're going to start creating stuff for the Atari and Commodore. How did the next step happen?
Well, we quickly realized that there was a fast rise and fall to the popularity of a game. In fact, in the latter days, it got down to where a game would sell for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then it would die. So we realized we really need to keep this thing going. We've got to have more products. So Nasser stayed busy. He came out with Cyber Strike and a few other games, but then we started recruiting other programmers, meeting them mostly at trade shows where we would take our giant screen TV and we'd go and set up. That was back when large projection screens first came out, and we bought some of them for trade show use. So West Coast Computer Fair, I think it was the third West Coast Computer Fair, was the first trade show we ever went to. And we're in a nice big corner booth with a big screen going, and it was a huge hit. But I started recording programmers and picked up Mark Trammell and Dan Thompson and, oh, God, I can't remember all the names now. But by mid-1981, we probably had a staff of 15 programmers. And by 1982, 1983, we had that many in-house and another 30 or 40 outside programmers. So it kind of got nuts. The average age of the employee was 19 years old. Working production line as well as doing programming. So it was more like a fraternity, sorority kind of setup than it was a company. Terry and I were, father, mother, confidant, friend, all that to these kids that were working for us.
Sounds like a situation that's rife for drama. Just youthful
Well,
problems.
it was like the boys hadn't discovered girls yet, and my job was to keep them from doing that. So, when they had spare time, I tried to fill it. We'd go out and we'd play miniature golf for money, or we'd go to the water slides, or wherever it took to keep these guys off the streets and away from alcohol and women. I could keep them busy, keep them programming. They typically slept all day and worked all night. So I'd come in the business in the morning and then I'd be there until 2 or 3 in the morning every day. So there wasn't any personal life left for me, but I loved it so much it didn't make any difference.
All right, so you're churning out software. I looked at the list. I know I kind of think of you guys as, maybe I'm wrong, as mostly an Apple II house, but then I went to look at get a definitive list of what you guys created for the Atari, which is my focus, and man, there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, we did a lot of Atari work, Atari VCS as well as the 400, 800, 1200. We even did some IBM PC stuff, and the Z80 processor was popular back then as a competitor to the 6502 chip in the Atari and the Apple. And so we started doing development for Microsoft through their Asian company called ASCII. So we actually went and sat down with Bill Gates and negotiated contracts with him. And Apple themselves went down and had meetings with Jobs, and Apple ended up buying $1.5 million worth of our Apple II product. So they became a distributor for us. And that was a really huge boost. It turned out that most of it got stolen out of their warehouses before it ever made it to their dealers. Apple had a terrible reputation back then for employees who just had no respect for copyright or anything. It was horrible. They had they got rid of it somehow, but it was pretty bad for a long time there. In fact, when we sold, we had a semi-truck that we took down one load of product to one of their warehouses, and both Terry and I personally went down with it and had the guy count out every product and sign off every sheet. And they actually came back to us later and told us we short sold them that the inventory wasn't all there, and we came back with all the signed up paperwork to prove that it was. Other warehouse guys were ripping it off right and left. So $1.5 million just sort of disappeared in the warehouses.
Wow.
Weird. But yeah, the Atari stuff, we first we started converting programs over like Bandits and Repcon. But then we had programmers who were bringing us original works on Atari that we would then convert to Apple and even to Commodore. So Commodore became a big market for us, the VIC-20 and the Commodore 64 and the 128. There were so many computers, spouting up all over the place that it was hard to keep track of them all. And we never had any relationship directly with Atari like we did with Apple. Apple was always our favorite. There was nobody at the Atari company ever reached out in any way to us.
It's probably for the best. So I'm looking down the list here. Is there any? I don't know. What should we? First of all, Capture the Flag. As far as I know, it wasn't a big seller for you, but man, that was a technologically impressive game.
It wasn't much of a game, but yes, technologically, it was a really cool 3D effect.
Yeah, and two
cool.
people playing at once, walking around the maze, and yeah, it was awesome.
Right. Yeah, you're right. It wasn't a big seller. Nothing there to really draw you in, but yeah, some of the stuff that was done by the programmers technologically was amazing. I don't know if you remember a guy named Larry Miller. I don't think we never put any of his products on the Atari because when he came to us, he was already in his late 30s and was a medical physician and had his PhD in physics and started video game programming. He quit his medical practice and became a video game programmer. And the first thing he did was us with a game called Epic. And we showed it the first time at our company Christmas party. And when all the other programmers showed up and saw it playing, they started looking for where the mainframe was that was running it because they couldn't believe it was running off of an Apple II. He was an amazing guy. He left us and went over to UC Davis and started designing artificial hearts.
Wow.
His brain power was so far above anybody else's. It was pretty shocking.
Yeah. Apple was where your bread was buttered, it sounds like.
In the beginning, yeah. The Atari games really took off in sales later on, but almost came in too late because the market crashed in '84, and most of our products that we had developed for the Atari were still inbound from the factories because they had to be put on cartridges for like the VIC-20 and the Atari 400 stuff. We were making cartridges, and a lot of that stuff it took 6 months to get a ROM made.
Wow.
So after you programmed the game, the ROM manufacturers were so backed up with the boom in the video game business that they couldn't keep up. So we had several $1 million worth of ROMs inbound when the whole market collapsed. And we were kind of like Atari in that regard. We ended up, a lot of it just ended up going to the dump. There's no place to go with it.
Might be jumping a little prematurely to the end here, but I noticed that in 1983, you guys were the 15th largest software company with sales of $11 million, and in 1984 you went bankrupt.
Yeah, well, us and Atari and Commodore and everybody else that was in the business.
Yeah,
we all went bankrupt together. Yeah. Well, we got screwed by Fox.
Tell me the story there.
Yeah, they wanted to get into the video game business, so they came to us, specifically the Atari VCS market. And that really wasn't our market. So we agreed, we contracted with them, and they paid us a certain amount of money up front for development, and then we were to get a royalty on the game sales. And we had audit rights and all the rest of the things that you would normally build in. We had lawyers supposedly protecting us. But they set it up as a separate corporation wholly owned by Fox. Fox Video Games, Inc., I think is the name of it. And they ended up bilking us, as far as we could tell, of about $14 million. And that's what precipitated our bankruptcy. We couldn't absorb that kind of a loss. There was no way in hell. And we chased them with lawyers all over the country. They kept moving their accounting records from one physical location to another. The auditors had to go to Chicago and New York and Florida. And I mean, we're paying these lawyers and auditors to fly over the country to audit them, and they just kept moving shit around. And we never could find even one transaction from its beginning to its end. And we had to give up. Fox had way more money than we had, and we learned our valuable lesson about dealing with entertainment companies. You don't,
right?
But it put us into bankruptcy, and there was just no recovering from that kind of a loss. And of course, all the programmers got screwed. They were all expecting royalties. Of course, they all took it out on me personally. Thinking I was responsible. I had nothing to do with it, but anyway, there was a lot of ugly ending there, unfortunately. But
and then after you filed bankruptcy, was that the end of it, or did it wasn't reborn in or any way? That was just it, right?
No, I did consulting for a couple of other video game companies that had just started up after that, but the market was pretty well dead, and it was several years more before the Nintendo came back out and revived the market. But the thing that really killed the market, other than, it was overhyped to start with. Everybody wanted to be in the business because they saw how it was growing, and so there was literally 10 times more product on the shelves than there were customers to buy the product.
Yeah.
and that was its ultimate demise. It was just the hype of it all was the biggest problem. Was too much product, too few customers. Oh, and I remembered it. Piracy killed everybody. It got so bad that we started hunting down the pirates, the best of the pirates, the ones who were breaking our very best code, and then we'd end up hiring them to help us write protection code.
Really?
Yeah, one of them who was really good at it was we met him when he was 15, Tom McWilliams, and we ended up hiring him. Great kid. He was just a kid. He wanted the games and he couldn't afford to buy them and all that. So he was breaking the code and making life miserable for all of us.
So you paid him?
Yeah, he became an employee. He actually wrote a video game for us. Helped us set up our production lines. We could actually make a copy of a video game, an entire diskette in 4 seconds on the production line. When it was normally take an Apple copy routine a couple of minutes, and we were doing it in 4 seconds. So our production line was whizzing along so fast that the humans almost couldn't keep up with it. But Tom wrote all that code, so we kept him pretty busy, and he was a good kid, good family.
So there's kind of a story, kind of a belief in the Atari mythology that piracy killed the Atari. So I'd like to know from you, was the piracy on the Atari side of things any worse than on the Apple side of things, or Commodore, or whatever?
No worse. And we didn't really actually see the piracy on the Atari side like we did on the Apple side. We never put the effort into the Atari protection schemes that we put into the Apple schemes. I think Apple programmers in general and hackers were much more plentiful and a couple of years ahead of the Atari guys. We never had. We just never got into that with the Atari at all. We just made the games and sold them, and they seemed to be okay. If they were being pirated, we weren't all that familiar with it. Of course, we were part of the Atari culture as much as we were the Apple culture.
So you said you were not part of the Atari culture as much as the Apple culture?
No, not really. Like I said, we had no relationship with the Atari Corporation.
Right. Yeah.
Apple was still a reasonably small company, so we knew everybody down there. We knew Woz and Jobs personally. So it was like I say, we knew anybody at Atari. Commodore was just a pathetic company. We were at a trade show in Chicago at the Consumer Electronics Show. And we had a huge booth. We had a 1,600 square foot booth with 44 computers set up. And the president of Commodore came over to talk to me, and he said he wanted us to license him all of the Commodore products. And I said, well, we're doing just fine, without you. And he sat there in front of witnesses and said, if you don't license us the products, we'll just market them anyway, and there won't be anything you can do about it. I mean, those are almost his exact words. It's like, oh my God, this guy's out of his mind doing this in front of witnesses. But they were big. They thought they had the clout to make people do what they wanted done. It was my introduction to big business. I had no prior experience dealing with big business people, and how they operate. And it's like, This is nuts.
Was this Jack Trammell who did this, do you think?
Yeah, that's the guy. Yeah, I forgot his name. But yeah, that was him. Well, what an a-hole. You can put that on your podcast.
That's going to be the headline right there.
He should come back after all these years and apologize for his rudeness.
He's dead now, so he's not going to do that.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Oh, there is a God.
He ended up at Atari though, and he screwed over my favorite company before he went out. So.
Oh, which Atari did you start with?
Well, I started with the Atari 800, and
Oh, that was a good machine.
Yeah. Eventually, though, Jack Trammell ended up buying Atari from Warner Communications, and he ran that into the ground. So, yeah.
Everything went out of business, so it wasn't any. I mean,
That's true.
Anybody that was big in the video game business went under. Everybody suffered the same fate. And Terry and I had a philosophy when we first started it. We said, we're going to do this as long as it's fun. And when it's not fun anymore, we're going to get out. And we tried to get out. We were trying to sell the company for about a year. And we had a goal that we wanted to sell it for. We couldn't quite get there. Mm-hmm. And then the whole thing fell apart before we could. But we both wanted to get out and have cash and retire. My goal was, at that time, to retire at age 35. Mm-hmm. And we almost made it. We were just like $1 million short each, But too late. We should have tried earlier.
I have two questions regarding that. I'm going to spit them out both now so I don't forget them. Number one, were you trying to sell to online systems? Because I read some stuff online that said that you were selling to online systems, and then the next issue they're like, oh no, sorry, we were wrong, that wasn't happening. And number two is, why did it stop being fun?
It stopped being fun when we started dealing with all of the big businesses. The Kmarts, the Toys R Us, the Fox Video Games. When we stopped being our own bosses and had to respond to all of these powerful people, that's when it stopped being fun. But going back to the online thing, we were at there was a magazine, there was Creative Computing, and there was Soft Talk, and there were a few other magazines that were doing articles about video games and developers and doing video game reviews. Mm-hmm. And I swear I can't remember the name of this magazine, but there was a magazine that came out with a review of Sneakers or Fast Eddie, one of Mark Trammell's games. And you could tell by the review that the guy had never even seen the game. He just panned it horribly. And so by coincidence, we were at a crappy little computer trade show in Phoenix, and Sierra Online was in the booth next to us, and the next booth over was that magazine. And so we decided, since these people like to print crap that's not true, let's set something up and see what they do. So we let a rumor pass through the whole trade show, not officially from anybody, just a rumor, mm-hmm. that Sierra Online and Sirius were going to sign a contract merging the two companies at the show. Mm-hmm. So this rumor floated around. So about an hour later, I go over to Ken's booth, and we sign a contract agreeing to share some graphics technology. Mm-hmm. Had nothing to do with a merger. So we were signing a contract. This guy, this same reporter, was in that booth next to us on a stepladder with a camera, taking photographs down on us, signing this contract. And then they turned around the next week and they published the article about us merging. Mm-hmm. and so we had our lawyers contact them. And, oh, God, we had so much fun with that. Everybody in the trade show knew what was going on. Every booth, including the Boy Scouts, knew what was going on, except for that a-hole on the ladder who published that bad review and then got reamed by our lawyers for publishing something that was not factual.
Nice.
Never came over to confirm the story, never asked us in person what the contract was for. Complete hack as a journalist.
This was, I believe, but the article I saw, this has to be the same article, was in InfoWorld magazine.
That's the guy. Yeah.
Yeah. And then in the next issue, there was something like, oh, no, we were wrong. It was an errata thing saying, oh, they're just going to share some manufacturing facilities or something boring like that.
Yeah, well, I didn't even know he printed a retraction, but that's nice to know.
Too little, too late.
Yeah, well, he was getting paid by the word, so he was just seeing like a game title, and he'd do a review and get paid by the word.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't care if it was true, if he actually had to go out and buy the game or play it, or he didn't want to spend the time actually playing it. He just wanted to get paid by the word.
Right.
So I think he got taught a little lesson. We would everybody knew each other back then as far as the video game people. Ken Williams at Sierra Online and his wife and all their staff. We all knew each other. We had parties together. Broderbun, Gary, and Doug, we had parties at their house, and everybody knew everybody. We'd all play pranks on each other, and it was just everybody was having a good time.
Nice. Tell me a prank story.
Broderbun's had a party at their house, and I printed up little 1-by-1-inch pieces of paper that had different video game companies' logos on them, tens of thousands of them. And put them in little baggies, and we handed them out to people at the party with the proviso that they keep it secret from Gary and Doug. And this party was actually in one of their two houses. I think it was Gary's house, or maybe they were sharing a house at the time. But people went in and hid those things everywhere. Rolled them up on the toilet paper, put them inside their socks and their drawers, and in their heating and air conditioning system so that they'd blow out when the air conditioning came on, and everywhere you could think, inside books and magazines and under furniture. They were cleaning those things up for 2 years. They were still finding those things. So that was that was a nice trick. Ken Williams, we hired an actress to dress up as a bum, off the street bum. Got her in a Consumer Electronics show, and she followed Ken around all day long. Would not leave his side. And, he figured it out eventually, but for hours, he was trying to deal with all these big buyers, and this woman in this, shabby attire was following him around. There was lots of that kind of stuff.
Love it.
It's friendly, harmless stuff,
Nice. I'd love that you guys hung out and partied and played tricks, and it seems like an awesome situation to be in, to be playing with competitors.
For about 2 years, it was like being, who was the god who turned to Midas? Everything we touched turned to gold. For about 2 years, and then it got too big, which got to be not fun. And, where the funny thing is about it, though, was a couple of years after Sirius folded, Stanford Business School came out with a new management program that they were teaching called Management by Walking Around. And their theory was that you never stayed if you were a manager, you never stayed in your own office. You went out with the people you were managing and you helped them work. And I thought, shit, I invented that. My office had dust, a 1/4 inch thick on its desk, on this big, nice horseshoe-shaped desk that I just had to have in my corner office that I never went into, because I'd go out and I'd work on the production line with the people, see how things were going, see if there was a way to improve things, go over and work in the nights with the programmers, helping them program and, work out bugs and, keep them inspired and, just work your way around to the advertising and everything but bookkeeping. That wasn't my part of the company, but, I was always walking around talking to people, making sure things were good, keeping spirits up. And then they came up with a whole new management course based on it. It's like, that's hilarious.
And the management course is basically pay attention to your business.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, get out and merge with the people and find out what they're doing rather than sitting in your office expecting things to show up in your inbox.
Right.
Like,
I want
I have
to.
an inbox. Go ahead.
I said I want to get back to. You mentioned something before that a game would sell for 2 weeks, and then that would be it. That would be its prime time was for 2 or 3 weeks, and I just like that's amazing.
Yeah. There really was no aftermarket for products. So the pressure to put out more and more and more games as the company grew and had to sustain its own weight, it got to the point where we had to bring out 4 to 10 new titles a month, and that was just unsustainable. It was geometrically growing. There was no way you could keep putting out quality product and doing that.
Right.
And then, after Nintendo came out, they had kind of a similar experience for a while. And then people started really investing a lot of money into video games, into the development of them. And instead of it being Nasser in his bedroom for 30 hours, it was, 100 people in a studio, artists and actors and programmers and story writers. It became something where a game would come on the market and last for years rather than just for weeks. Things like Halo, which have taken big teams of people to develop that and have a really long life.
Right. Yeah, and that's quite different from just being one guy in his bedroom hacking out a game in 30 hours.
Right, and a lot of the fun went out of it because of that. But that's what it is. Games are a lot better now than they were then, but so is the hardware. What you can do with a 1 megahertz processor is pretty amazing, but what you can do with the new processors is truly amazing.
And then also I noticed there was a legal battle with another company named Sirius, a hardware manufacturer.
Sirius Computers, they were, I think, based in San Jose.
And it was Chuck Peddle.
Yeah. So this had an interesting outcome. So we sued them for trademark infringement. We did have a registered trademark, and we went to court. And of course, everybody showed up with literally, pallets full of documents. And at one point, the attorney for the other Sirius said he had another case that he had to be on, and he asked for a 2-week continuance, and the judge granted it. And when we came back from the continuance, he gets up and he says, "Well, we now have prior rights to the name. We bought a bankrupt company in Tennessee that had the name Sirius and was in the computer business 10 years ago." And the judge turned to the stenographer and said, "We're going to go off the record, take a break." So the stenographer got up and walked out the door, and he turned to this guy and he said, "I gave you a continuance. That meant that all action of any kind on this case was supposed to cease. And during that time, you deceptively went out and bought another company, and now you're coming back trying to use that information against this company." And he said, "Here's what's going to happen." He said, "You're going to take Jerry and his lawyer out the door, and you are going to work out an agreement. And none of what I have just said is going to be on the record. But if you don't do this, when we go back on the record, I'm going to have your license taken away by the bar for fraud, basically, to the court." He says, "You are an officer of the court, and you violated your trust of the court." And so we went out, and they negotiated a settlement with us within like 5 minutes. And we came back in, and the judge says, "We're going back on the record now." And he says, "Was there anything that I said or that was done while we were off the record that would prejudice this case in any way?" And the stenographer, of course, is writing all this down, and everybody says, "Nope, your judge, everything is just fine." And we entered the judgment, and that was the end of the U.S. battle. Well, Sirius as a company was based in Germany, their headquarters, Germany, and they were using the name in Europe. So we went to Germany and we sued them in Germany because we were selling video games in Germany. Well, Germany had never had a case where a company headquartered in Germany lost a trademark case to a foreign company. But this was the first time it had ever happened in German court history. We went in Germany, we beat them in Germany, and they had to stop using the name there also. But it cost us a fortune. We were out probably $500,000 in legal fees, by the time it was all over. And that kind of crap eats up your time and your fun,
Yeah, absolutely.
Next, you got more. You did a lot of research.
Thank you. No, that's all I've found in my research. It was just a lot of the two things: the online systems and the other Sirius company deal.
Yeah, and the last thing I want to add here, and a lot of people, especially people who were programmers for Sirius, probably never got it straight in their minds what happened during the bankruptcy. We had a bankruptcy attorney whose name was Robert Meese Jr., M-E-E-S, spell it correctly, who had full power of attorney over our bank accounts, and who kept telling us different stories about how the bankruptcy was proceeding with all of the different vendors and everything. And we kept getting different stories, but we were trying to stay transparent with the programmers, so we kept telling them what the bankruptcy attorney told us. And when the stories started getting really, really confusing, and everybody started thinking that there was something fishy going on. Well, there was something fishy going on. It turned out that the guy had absconded with all of our money. He had also done it to other clients, and he ended up 2 years later going to prison. But this was long after we were closed and gone, and everybody was pissed off at Terry and I, thinking we had screwed them, that where had all that money gone? Well, if they want to go look up Robert Meese Jr. and, do whatever they want to him, I'd be perfectly happy to help them find him. I have no idea where he is now, but I'm sure he's either out of prison or dead or both. But yeah, the guy screwed us all, and I was getting blamed for almost all of it. Lost a lot of good friendships over it, unfortunately.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, well, I was going to say that's pretty negative. And now you said you did this because you wanted fun. So I want another fun story. When we get near the end, we need to end on a happier a note of something that's awesome and fun.
So I've always loved the creative side of it, and I hated it when it got to be anything other than that. That's when it wasn't fun. And so now I'm back doing fun stuff again. I create animatronic characters for theme parks and haunted houses mostly.
Oh, nice.
And I have a little company and a couple of part-time employees, and it got big at one point, and I actually knocked out most of the product line to keep it back small enough that I wasn't doing accounting and marketing all the time. And I spend most of my days in the shop now doing animation and creating creatures and, doing fun stuff. And that's all I do every day. And I don't want to be rich anymore. I don't care about that anymore. I just want to come to work every day and have something interesting and fun to do. Deal with creative people and not with business a-holes.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a very jagged line between being successful and being happy. That's
true.
So I think we spent almost an hour, didn't we?
Yeah, it's 46 minutes now.
Wow.
I'm almost done, but I have a couple more questions. First of all, do you have any software? Do you have any source code? Do you have any stuff that hasn't been published that we need to archive and save for the world?
I don't think I have anything, that was not published. I think yeah, I don't think so. No, I've got, pretty good selection of all of the games that we had, still in their first packages. I just gave them a bunch of them to one of the video game museums over in Phoenix.
Nice.
So a lot of them are over there. I don't remember the guy's name right now. I could look it up for you. But and I do have. I did just go recently to a reunion of all of the original Apple II developers. The only one who didn't show up really was Woz.
Mm-hmm.
But John Romero and Chuck Somerville and David Schroeder and Steve Baker, all those guys.
Nice.
I took Tim Wilson, a whole bunch of them. I took a Apple II computer down, and they all signed the lid of it. It was kind of a fun party. It was a fun party at John and Brenda Romero's home. It was very nice of them to put it on.
Nice.
But mostly Apple II people, not the Atari guys, because I really didn't know the Atari guys.
Right. Have you heard of the Kansas Fest show? You might enjoy it.
No.
Kansas Fest is an annual Apple II conference that goes over 5 days. It happens every summer in Kansas City, Missouri. And it is a lot of fun. I go every year, even though I'm an Atari guy. And people sleep in dorms at Rockhurst University and play with Apple IIs. And there's all sorts of super geeky, talks and things. And it's a lot of fun.
Might be fun to go to.
Yeah, you should look it up. It's pretty awesome.
What time of the year is it?
It's every summer. That I think the next one's in July.
Yeah, that's the height of my production season.
Is it?
So it's later July. Yeah, we start producing in about March for the Halloween season. It takes 30 to 60 days to build a product for somebody. So we start. Our trade shows are in January, February for the Animatronics market, for the Halloween market. And then, by the time September rolls around, you're all done.
Yeah.
Everything's produced and shipped. So we're actually making product now for next year. So.
Wow. Yeah, Kansas Fest next year will be in July 19th through 24th. So what do people want in animatronics? What's the big seller?
Well, our big seller is just a skeleton. Skull skeleton. It's the most popular. You can never have enough skeletons in a haunted house, and they're highly animated. And we use professional voice actors and script writers, and the animation is pretty awesome. They're very realistic. A lot of people say our animation is better than Disney. The stuff's reasonably priced. You can buy an animated skull and skeleton for about $3,000. Whereas, something that Disney would cost them hundreds of grand. So something that half of our customers are actually homeowners that use them at their haunts, at their homes, would have that kind of money to spend.
Wow.
So they're pretty awesome. People can do their own animation on them. They can have us do it. We can, do entire scenes, entire shows, multiple characters, and some of the stuff gets pretty elaborate.
Nice.
We just set up a show for a Polynesian pirate theme down in Las Vegas. People can go down and see a show there of our animatronics. We're at Six Flags and Universal Studios, and a lot of the big places have our stuff.
Oh, that's really cool. Nice.
It's like I say, it's a fun business. It's we create our own control boards, electronics. Got engineers that that we can rely on for good work for programming and hardware design.
That's really cool. Nice.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
And you're going to keep doing it till it stops being fun?
Yeah, and I'm 66 years old and I'm still having fun at it. But one of these days I'm going to say, I've had enough of this. And when I do, it'll be one of the kids that, we've trained here that'll take over.
Nice. If you could send a message to the people who played your games back in the day, who are now listening to this podcast, what would you tell them?
Thanks for all the money. we really, what I guess the reason I like the creative side of all of this, and especially back when Sirius was going, was it really gives me an ego boost, and to watch people playing and be happy playing them, and it just makes me feel proud and that I have actually accomplished something, and that's very cool. It's hard to get ego boosts in today's society.
Yeah.
And pretty much the only reason I go to trade shows anymore is to show off my products and have people, especially the kids, have the kids lined up watching and laughing and smiling and, they're, in awe. It's pretty incredible.
Nice. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much, Jerry.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you very much.
If you enjoyed these interviews and would like to contribute something, I encourage you instead to donate to one of our favorite organizations, the Internet Archive, at archive.org. The Internet Archive is a nonprofit digital library with the stated mission of universal access to all knowledge. They've done incredible things to preserve computer history, including hosting thousands of programs in an in-browser Atari emulator, creating the Wayback Machine, and offering full-page scans of countless Atari computer books and magazines. Make your tax-deductible contribution at archive.org/donate.